So, something else we were going to talk about was, again, Mad Fast. And I wanted this to be specifically kind of with the emphasis of, or I should say, the end goal of catching Drake up to speed on everything that's happened. But these are still all very interesting discussion points. And the first of which is comparing a couple of the different quarterback moves and the impact that they will have on that NFL team next year. So the first of which, Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh, Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. And the other one that I made specific note of is one that's not official yet, but all but official, and that's Caleb Williams to Chicago. Now, the question specifically, which team gains more wins than they had last year under the previous regime? So Pittsburgh was a 10-7 team, made the playoffs. Atlanta, 7-10, did not. Chicago, also 7-10, did not. Now, Pittsburgh, again, I see them taking a marginal step up in terms of their overall team. I didn't make note of it specifically earlier, but beyond they've obviously gotten better as a team, but I think to some people, they don't really look at the right aspects or the whole picture. They look at it in a strictly linear sense. All right, we got this much better, so our results will be that much more. Not in football. And not in a lot of things, but not in football, because look at the Steelers' schedule last year. They had a lot of very close wins. Generally, year over year, a lot of those flip. So nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. Now, you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. So they are moving forward, which is a good start. I would say if someone gave me if I set the over-under for Steelers wins this year, I would put it at 10.5. Because I could see them being 10-7 again, but I could also see them being one step up, being 11-6. It's hard to picture them being like a 13-14 win team. So I only really see Russ equating to one more win for Pittsburgh. But obviously, when you're at that tier, one win is a lot. And that can be the difference between in the playoffs or out of the playoffs in the AFC. And in the North, that could be the difference between second place versus winning the division because of how clogged and how jungled it is. So I see one win for Russ. Now let's go to Kirk. I see 3. I see the Falcons going from a 7-win team to a 10-win team. Part of it's the improvement at quarterback, because I don't think you can say enough how much Desmond Ridder truly limited that team. It was pretty obvious early on, even last year with the Marcus Mariota experiment. It was pretty clear that these guys were in the QB wilderness. Kirk Cousins is what takes you out of that. That's why he's so enticing. Even with the injury, you know what he's going to give you. You really do. And Kirk Cousins, while not a top 8 quarterback and to most people not a top 10, he's very, very steady. And he's coming off some of the best football of his career. And he's going into a new infrastructure in Atlanta that's familiar with his game, because they got guys coming from the Shanahan tree. And I like the head coach hire in Raheem Morris. And that defense was nice last year. I think it'll only get better. I think the offense will get a lot better. I don't recall the name, but OC also is someone coming from that General Shanahan McVay type of tree. And I like what they got going there. And I think it's a soft division. You could say that looking at Tampa Bay and New Orleans and the Panthers, that's an enticing 4 or 5 wins right there. That's a great start, and it's the weaker conference. So I see 3 additional wins for the Falcons. I would probably put their over under at about 9.5 for win total, because there is still the chance that someone wins that division with a shit record. But I like where that team's at right now, and I think they still have room to improve with the remaining time on the calendar from the rest of the offseason. Now, lastly, this one's interesting, and that's Caleb Williams. So he's obviously by far, and these other guys weren't either, but he's not the only addition the Bears made. Of course, they brought in Keenan Allen, big move. They brought in DeAndre Swift to stabilize that backfield. They brought in the center from Buffalo, And defensively, last year they brought in Sweat, so now they will have a full year of Sweat. They locked in Jalen Johnson. Like, they've got some nice pieces. They brought in Kevin Byard. Forgot about that one. So they made some big moves, but the biggest will be Caleb Williams because while I don't know if he's a top 10 guy or a generational talent or anything like that, I know that he is, from a talent standpoint at least, better than anything the Bears have seen in the Super Bowl era. All he has to do is be better than Jay Cutler, which, hey, respect to Smoking Jay is what a lot of Bears fans' first reactions might be. And yeah, Cutler was decent. I remember always being a big proponent of the talent that guy had. But Caleb Williams would be a potentially franchise-altering player for them. And I hope Bears fans lean into it for their own sake, maybe not for Packer fans' sake or the rest of the NFC North. But for Chicago, that organization needs to embrace him and ensure they continue to do what they've started to do, which is put in the right pieces to where it is a smooth transition and you could start to stack on your success. I see them being a potentially 9 to 10 win team next year. They have a soft schedule. They play, I want to say it's like 7 teams that are picking in the top 10. Crazy as that sounds. So they have a very good opportunity to improve as an organization. So I think they're right on the fringe with how many wins I would give to the Falcons to add on to last year. So very close between those two. I think Pittsburgh's marginally better. As far as other quarterback moves, I don't think they're going to have as significant of a impact on the organizations that they're going to. Now, the next one was going to be more likely to get traded first, T. Higgins or Stephon Diggs. So quickly on this one, I think it's going to be close because there seems to be a general lack of urgency to get these done. T. Higgins obviously wants more money, and he's seen how these the contracts that have happened. He's like, all right, someone's going to pay me. But you could throw Ayuk in there. Whoa, I think Ayuk is the one who gets traded first. I really do. And it's something to where I think the Niners are starting to get put in a bind a little bit, which is, it's a good problem. It's a first world problem because when you draft so well and you got so many guys to pay, is you can't pay everybody and you got to let certain guys walk. And I think I don't see them having paid both Debo and Ayuk when you add on the fact that, yeah, you're paying McCaffrey. Currently, you're paying Kittle, though his time might be coming to an end. You're playing Bosa like market-setting money. You brought in Hargrave last year. Like, you can't pay everyone. And you're going to, Fred Warner is obviously an expensive piece too. Hufanga, if he comes back all healthy, he'll be due for a contract in the coming years. And then obviously Brock Purdy, if you think he's the guy, he's going to be coming due soon too. You can't keep everyone. Not in this business, not in a salary cap league. So he would be first. Now, for the other two, I would say Diggs, because for T. Higgins and the Bengals, it seems like both sides are kind of dug in. But for Diggs and the Bills, I think there's a little bit better chance that the Bills are like, whatever. Let's move on and let's turn the page. But for the Bengals, I think they really want to squeeze one more year out of this awesome, and yes, truly awesome duo that they have in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, because they did lose Tyler Boyd. And as far as I know, they did not bring him back. So they also lost Joe Mixon. Like, you can't lose everybody. Like, it's just, they're not ready to let go. So I think they'll be a little bit more stubborn. So if I had to go in order, I'd say Ayuk, and then I would go with Diggs, and then T. Higgins, I don't even think happens. But if it does, it would be a little bit later, I think. Now, this one's interesting. More likely to miss the playoffs, Eagles or Cowboys? So you know what I said earlier? about, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward, that would be the Cowboys, right? Because they made no moves of note. They brought in Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, and they re-signed a long snapper, and they let Pollard walk, and Gilmore's unsigned, and Tyron Smith walked, and Dak is not extended. You cut Gallup. Like, what are you banking on here to get better? Mike McCarthy in an interview said, well, we got guys coming back. Yeah, you do. You've got Trayvon Diggs returning from injury. I'm not sure what other major guys that you guys were short last year, but I have major concerns about that Cowboys roster. Now, I made this point to Fur the other day of McCarthy's got to feel like he's back in Green Bay to where, he's not spending money and he's got to get better through the draft, which is, unfortunate for him. But, they do still have some quality central players. I like the addition of Zimmer on the defensive staff, though I think when compared to Dan Quinn, like, you'd say probably a wash, maybe a step back, and maybe some people argue a step up. But either way, I think you're about leveling even there. So they do draft well. But their O-line was really depleted because they also lost Biotish. Like, Tyron Smith is one they actually could live with because of the injuries that he's had, and they've kind of built the succession plan in before. But for the other needs that they have, especially at the running back spot, like, yeah, you could solve that through the draft, but still no guarantee. And I think that they do need another receiver. I really do. And I think their defense needs another piece at linebacker. I think they need something to where they can be a little bit better against like those ground and pound type of teams, or even an interior lineman, I think would really be crucial to them. But the Eagles, it's not all sunshine and roses there either. Like, yeah, you brought in Gardner Johnson. Yeah, you got replacements at coordinator in Fangio and Kellen Moore, which I do like. And I think that stabilizes those spots a lot with guys that I think are quality coordinators for sure. And of course, the big ticket item is bringing in Saquon. I think I mentioned Gardner Johnson already. And, you lose Kelsey to retirement, which does obviously hurt. But if you're going from the best O-line in football to like, 7th or 8th or something like that, like, you would live with that. And you do draft well as an organization. So I still like the Eagles. And I would say more likely to miss the playoffs is Cowboys. And we've got a lot of time before we have to start making these predictions. But I think the Cowboys might be in some real trouble. And I'm not the only one saying that. Obviously, they're a team that a lot of people talk about in the media in general. But it's really going to be hard because they have set a standard for at least regular season play in the McCarthy era. But we really shall see. If I had to say it today, I would say Eagles in, Cowboys out. And staying on the Saquon route, more likely to win the Super Bowl with their new team, Derrick Henry on the Ravens or Saquon Barkley on the Eagles. Ooh. So let's think about it. The Eagles, we went through all their moves. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and now they've got an elite electric running back. The Ravens were the 1 seed last year, and they were 7 points short of beating the eventual champs, who are now the 2-time defending champs. So I think that it's ultimately something where it's easy to argue either way. I'm going to go with the next year, at least, I would go with the Ravens. Because I do like Lamar better than I like Hurts. It's not that far off, but I like Lamar better. And between Henry and Saquon, relatively a wash. And receiver room, yeah, I'd give it to the Eagles, but I like the infrastructure in Baltimore more, especially at the head coaching position. I feel better about the Eagles in sense of like getting a chance to get back to the Super Bowl. I just doubt like their ability to win it when they do get there. I think that's they might be one of those types of teams. So it's really, really close, and it will depend, of course, on who hits in the draft and who doesn't. But if I had to answer today, I'd say it's a little bit more likely to be Derrick Henry and the Ravens. Now, let's go receivers, and this question is better addition. Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs or Keenan Allen to the Bears? So they're good for different reasons. Keenan is a better player, top 10 receiver in terms of the last several years. His whole career, really. He was very underrated early on, and then he started to get his praise, and then he's had one of his best seasons last year at the age of 33 or 32, whatever he is. And he's going to be a number 2 in Chicago, and that's crazy. I mean, maybe he's a 1B, or him and DJ Moore 1A 1B, and he'll be catching passes from Caleb Williams. They saw each other at the pro day. Like, that's a cool move. And then for the Chiefs, they get a speedster to take the top off the defense that they haven't had in 2 years, and they won the Super Bowl in those 2 years anyway, and now you give them someone to take the top off? Ridiculous. And so Keenan Allen's the better player, but I will say that the Hollywood Brown edition is better. I think it's better in the sense that Hollywood Brown's best football is probably ahead of him. Keenan Allen's probably isn't. Does that mean he's washed? No. Does that mean he doesn't have even maybe more than one good year left? It doesn't mean that. But his best football is behind him. Like, that's a simple fact. And maybe even stats-wise, Keenan ends up having a better statistical season, but the impact that Hollywood Brown can bring to an already dynastic type of team is a little scary. It's a little scary. All right, next question was going to be, who starts more games next year, Danny Dimes or Drew Lock? And I think Daniel Jones obviously enters the season as the starter. I think it's on the board that it's neither, and that they draft a QB and they start more games, because let's be real. I don't know if there's a team in the league that would trade their quarterback room and their quarterback situation for the Giants. And let's think about it. AFC North, no one would make that trade. Not even the Vikings, who are right now slated to start Sam Darnold. I think I'd rather have Darnold than Daniel Jones. And even if I wouldn't, I'd rather be in a position to draft a QB and not be on the books for one for several years to come. Packers obviously set. Bears obviously about to draft one. Lions are fine. NFC South even. I would rather take anyone's QB room in that division. NFC East, the only one you would say probably not would be the Commanders, and they're in a spot where they're probably going to take a quarterback as well. And then you go down the line for every single division in the league. Maybe the Titans with Will Levis, but at least he's got some, unseen upside, I would think. And honestly, with the Raiders even, I think I would rather have Gardner Minshew and the flexibility to draft someone. So back to the question of who starts more, I guess Danny Dimes. I think he'll start like 9 games next year before he gets pulled for Drew Lock or a rookie. But either way, I think this is his last season in New York. Last question here was sadder news for retirements: Jason Kelce or Aaron Donald? Tough one. Defining the generation of both sides of the trenches over the past 10 plus years. I would say Aaron Donald, from a standpoint of like him being a, like face of the league type of guy. Jason Kelce is a lot more of like the feelings guy. Like, it's, a lot of people related to him. He's someone that like was really obviously passionate about it, and he gave great speeches and things like that. So that one's sad too. I'd have to go Donald. I just would have to go Donald.